Now, the fate of Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, will be revealed in the coming days as Supreme Court justices deliver their verdicts on his alleged coup attempt. So far, 2 have voted to convict him of plotting to seize power after losing the 2022 election. On Wednesday, 1 voted to annul the case. A simple majority of 3 of the 5 justices on the panel is needed for a guilty verdict. Jair Bolsonaro denies all charges. If convicted, he faces more than 40 years behind bars. The trial has divided Brazil. Many of his supporters see it as politically motivated, while his opponents view it as a test of Brazil's democracy. Dr. Andreza Santos is a senior lecturer in Brazilian and Latin American Studies at King's College London. Welcome to DW. So justices are currently 2-1 in favour of conviction. Which way do you think it'll go?
It will most likely go direction to full conviction. However, today's vote is very complicated because it gives an argument to actually make the whole trial perhaps illegitimate, or like making the vote was based on the idea that the Supreme Court should not be judging former President Bolsonaro. So that's a complicated vote. Even though in numbers it may be an isolated vote, it's still a complicated one.
Oh, I see, because if it goes against him, then who can he appeal to beyond the Supreme Court? This has gone as far as it can go, surely.
Well, the point is that as you're right, it's as far as it can go, but the vote was not like discussing the innocence of Bolsonaro. The vote was discussing the legitimacy of the court, courts in having the voting. So it could give a precedent to have, further appeals. Again, would be at the Supreme Court, but it could create like arguments for the defense.
Mr. Bolsonaro and his supporters claim this case is politically motivated. How independent is the Supreme Court?
Well, the Supreme Court is actually there to avoid that politicians would be trialed and judged in every first instance in courts. So it gives like politicians actually what we call immunity, so that they can only be trialed by the Supreme Court. So they gives a sort of, how can I say, a more difficult path for a politician to be trialed. So this gives every political trial is actually already very rare to happen. So the Supreme Court is the instance that can judge politicians, exactly because it is it's not easy to get to that to that level. So in that sense, it's not so politically charged, but obviously Supreme Court ministers, they are appointed by politicians. So in that sense, there is always a claim how neutral any judgment can be.
Right. The Supreme Court bench, I think, is 11 justices, but this is only being adjudicated by 5. Why?
Yeah. So it was voted before in the Supreme Court, before this case, that only politicians that are occupying their posts would be voted by, would be judged by the full plenary, like all the 11 ministers. Otherwise, just a simple group, which is 5.
Right. There are also geopolitical implications here, aren't there? US President Donald Trump, he's a strong supporter of Mr. Bolsonaro. He's used tariffs to try and pressure Brazil's government to keep Mr. Bolsonaro out of jail. Is there a worry in Brazil that Donald Trump could ramp up his interventions if Mr. Bolsonaro is convicted?
There is no precedent to what is happening in terms of this intervention in Brazil's sovereignty, because this is a trial of a crime, of a situation that happened in Brazil and it's been trialed in Brazil, but with another country intervening, creating like very high tariffs on Brazilian exports, and obviously also punishing ministers of the Supreme Court more directly. So it's difficult to think how this can escalate even further because it never happened before. But the damage of the actions is already very, very powerful in Brazilian society. But it has not made the ministers back off or shy away from their judgment and action. So it's still continuing. But obviously, if things further escalate, it's going to be politically also very difficult.
And I'm intrigued as to what you think will happen when there is a final decision. Are protests expected whichever way this case is decided, given the polarization that's out there?
I think there is a very strong expectation that he will be condemned. I think it would be very surprising if he's not. So in that sense, I don't know. I don't think there will be very large-scale protests because I think there was already when the judgment started and the court started. So I don't think it will be a surprise for anyone in the country. But obviously, there is a very strong pressure on the Congress because they can try to pass some laws to give like a kind of blanket amnesty to all the ones involved. So that is the further appeal that they're trying, not through the Supreme Court, but through the Congress.
Right. Thanks for talking us through that, Dr. Andreza Santos from King's College London.
Thank you.